Greg, how damaged are relations between the White House and the senator? And how should we think about the senator now? Is he an independent or is he still caucusing with the Democrats?
Well, it's good to see you. Still caucusing with the Democrats, but things are very, very rocky right now. Jen Psaki basically called him a liar and said he didn't negotiate in good faith. It's going to be hard to put this back together again. But at the same time, there's quite a bit of naivete. He told Chuck Schumer in the middle of the summer he would only go with 1.5 trillion. He said all during the fall he wouldn't agree to it. I've been writing this for 2 months that the deal wasn't going to happen. So for the White House to all of a sudden say, oh, we're shocked by this. I mean, do they live under a rock? I mean, it was pretty clear that Manchin was not going to support this.
So to that point, Greg, it's a fair point, which is also why the market reaction seemed so peculiar. And Goldman downgrading its growth forecast for the first quarter by 1 percentage point. What do you think needs to be drained out now because of it? And what do you think is actually more about the variant and what we're seeing with the Fed?
Well, good questions. First of all, I think the plan B may be to take some parts of this failed bill and try to pass them separately. I think there's a lot of support, even from Manchin, on some of these things. There is not a lot of support for the environmental stuff. And as everybody went to Glasgow last month and talked about going green, I think the U.S. is going to be embarrassed to not be able to keep up our commitment on a wide range of things, electric vehicles, you name it. But I think we can get some individual parts of the bill done, but no time soon. The next big deadline is February 18th. That's when the federal government has to get refunded, or we could be talking about a shutdown. So we got a good 2 months or so to go before there's any resumption of serious negotiations.
Greg, we've been trying to figure out why we're getting the reaction we're getting in the markets today. Is it Omicron? Is it what's happening with Manchin? Is it other factors? Is it year end? Let's just dwell for a moment on the Manchin side of things. Yeah. How much do you think was actually priced in? What expectations were there for Build Back Better in the market? Because talking to people this morning, the consensus seems to be actually the markets kind of hadn't priced that much, certainly less than $1 trillion. What do you think? Where do you think we were at?
Hard to say, Guy. Probably over $1 trillion. I think the markets were expecting something, and we're now not going to get it. So it's almost a trifecta. There's that. There's the withdrawal of stimulus from the Federal Reserve, which was well priced into the markets. And then clearly the sign that this variant is really quite serious. And I would just throw out 2 statistics. Percentage of Americans who have had 2 shots, 61%, quite low. Percentage of Americans who've had 3 shots, 28%. So we've got a long way to go. I think it could be weeks before this variant peaks out.
Yeah, it's such a good point. You had that in your morning note. I had the statistics were quite staggering. Greg, at the same time that we're dealing with the variant, the fallback of the Build Back Better bill, as well as a Fed withdrawal of monetary stimulus probably around the first quarter of next year, we're also dealing with fiscal constraints, and specifically the child tax credit is ending in weeks. Is policy going to get too tight on the monetary and fiscal front?
That's a real concern. In addition to not getting the $2 trillion bill, the child tax credit will still be in place. The increase that we got this year will be rolled back to where we were a year ago, but it will be a reduction for people who've gotten used to it. And then there's another factor that hasn't gotten much publicity, and that is student loans. Student loans resume, the payments resume on February 1. And for the 41 million Americans who have student loan debt, the average monthly price is about $300. That's a lot. That's a tax increase for a lot of Americans. Just when you didn't need a headwind, you get a headwind from student loans.
Greg, as we look forward into next year and we try and understand how the administration is going to position itself ahead of the midterms, what needs to change for the president, for the Democrats, to have a fighting chance?
I think they have to lower their expectations. I mean, actually, let's be fair. They got quite a few things done. The infrastructure bill, the COVID relief packages, but I think now they're going to have to lower their expectations. I think the country makes a connection, fairly or not, between all the spending and inflation. And with that connection, I think they've got to cut things back.
Hey, Greg, last question. What do you think has to happen with Omicron for us to talk about more stimulus, more furloughed workers? What is it? And how do you think that conversation plays in D.C.?
More ball games getting canceled, more businesses closing down, restaurants closing down. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.